you. It looks like we have everybody here, so we're going to go ahead and get started. So good afternoon and welcome to the Zoom webinar for the 2020-2021 Notice of Funding Availability for Homeless and Homelessness Prevention Programs. This presentation will cover the program overview, eligible activities, and contain a quick review of the application process, which was discussed in greater detail in the overall NOFA webinar presentation yesterday. We are joined today by Thomas Morgan, manager of the city's Housing and Community Development Division, Karen Jenks, the administrative manager for the city's Housing and Community Development Division, Erica Lopez, who is our program manager for Homeless and Homelessness Prevention, and I'm Edward Chinevere, senior management analyst with the Housing and Community Development Division. So today we're going to cover the following items. We'll go over the NOFA process and the consolidated plan and how that impacts the process for the NOFA this year. We'll do a program overview, review the eligible activities and costs and documentation and monitoring requirements. And then we'll do a quick review of the application process, and there will be time at the end for questions and answers. And with that, I am going to, whoops, sorry, this is me again. All right, so first we'll begin with a very quick overview of the planning process as it affects the programs eligible for the homeless and homelessness prevention programs. As we discussed in the overall presentation yesterday, program year 2020 to 2021 is a 5-year consolidated plan year, which means that activities are ordered a bit differently from in prior years. The main impact is that the city was unable to issue a NOFA earlier because the 5-year strategies had not yet been adopted by City Council. However, City Council did adopt both the plans on May 21st, including approved projects. Applications for specific activities that meet the objectives of those approved projects are being requested and are the subject of this NOFA. Note that multiple applications may be approved for funding for each project. The projects that were approved as part of the 2020 to 2021 plans, which are included in this application, are tenant-based rental assistance, described as home funds that will be used to subsidize private market units for homeless and low-income households to increase affordability, funded with $711,789 from the HOME program. Emergency Solutions Grant programs, and we'll talk more about the breakdown of this in the next slide, and that's funded by $673,230 of ESG funding. Housing opportunities for persons with HIV/AIDS, defined as funds that will be used to provide housing assistance and housing-related supportive services for persons living with AIDS, HIV, and their families. HOPWA funds will be used for supportive services, housing information and referral services, tenant-based rental assistance, short-term rent, mortgage, and utility assistance. And that's funded with $617,040 of HOPWA grant funds. Please note that many services that may meet the objectives of the city's homeless and homelessness prevention priorities may also qualify under the CDBG Public and Community Services application. So please contact us if you're not sure which one you ought to be submitting. The ESG funds are presented here. These are the funding levels that were approved at the February meeting of the Fresno Madera Continuum of Care. And the approved allocations include $227,247 for street outreach and emergency shelter for nonprofit subrecipients, $3,918 for homelessness prevention, $366,312 for rapid rehousing, both of those for nonprofit subrecipients, and $45,751 for the city to administer the program. In order to receive funding, a proposed activity must consist of eligible the 2020-2024 Consolidated Plan included a new set of strategic priorities, and the following activities were prioritized: homeless and homelessness prevention, rapid rehousing services, and homeless diversion services for potentially homeless individuals and families, the provision of homeless and homeless prevention services for residents with HIV/AIDS, the provision of emergency shelter, homeless prevention and diversion services for youth 18 to 24 years of age, and tenant-based rental assistance, security deposits, and utility payments to shelter very low and low-income residents. In order to receive funding, a proposed activity must consist of eligible activities, provide benefit to eligible persons, include only eligible costs according to federal requirements, address a priority area in the 5-year consolidated plan, and qualify under one of the approved projects in the annual action plan. In this case, that means it must comply with one of the 3 projects which we displayed on a previous slide. Please refer to the NOFA handbook for additional information on eligibility, such as eligible organizations and etc. The handbook can be found at www.fresno.gov/housing. Program Manager Erica Lopez will provide additional information about activities and costs. And with that, I'll hand it over to Erica Lopez, Program Manager for Homeless and Homelessness Prevention Programs with the City of Fresno.
Hello, this is Erica Lopez. Before we jump into the program overview, there is a slide with my contact information for your reference. So let's start talking about the Emergency Solutions Grant, otherwise referred to as ESG. The ESG program provides funding to engage homeless individuals and families, improve the number and quality of emergency shelters for homeless individuals and families, help operate homeless emergency shelters, provide essential services to shelter residents, rapidly rehouse homeless individuals and families, prevent families and individuals from becoming homeless. ESG consists of 5 activity components: Street Outreach, Emergency Shelter, Homeless Prevention, Rapid Rehousing, and Homeless Management Information System. In program year 2020-2021, ESG funds were not allocated to HMIS. HOPWA opportunities or housing opportunities for persons with HIV/AIDS, HOPWA. The HOPWA program was established to provide housing assistance and related supportive services for low-income persons living with HIV/AIDS and their family. HOPWA activity components consist of tenant-based rental assistance, otherwise known as TBRA, short-term rental, mortgage and utility assistance, otherwise known as STRMU, supportive services, housing information services, and emergency shelter operations. The next program is the Home TBRA. Home TBRA funds can be used to provide direct assistance to low-income households who need help paying for their rent. Home TBRA is a rental subsidy that helps make up the difference between what the renter can afford to pay and the actual rent for the home. Households who receive home TBRA assistance must have a gross annual income of 60% or less of the median income for the area. Households who receive home TBRA can pick the housing of their choice. The units may be publicly or privately owned and must meet housing quality standards. Units must have a reasonable rent based on the rents that are charged for comparable unassisted units in the jurisdiction. Eligible costs and activities. Allowable ESG activities and costs. ESG will fund the costs associated with the 5 activity components: street outreach, emergency shelter, homeless prevention, rapid rehousing, and HMIS. So the street outreach component. A street outreach serves unsheltered homeless persons. Essential services include outreach services for engagement, case management, emergency health and mental health services, transportation, and services for special populations. Special populations include homeless youth, homeless persons with HIV/AIDS, and homeless victims of domestic violence, sexual violence, and stalking. Emergency shelters. Emergency shelters serve people staying, or this funding serves people staying in emergency shelters. Essential services include case management, childcare, education, employment and life skills, legal services, health, mental health and substance abuse, transportation, and services for special populations. Please note, street outreach and emergency shelter expenditures are capped and combined. These 2 activity components cannot exceed 60% of the ESG grant award. Street outreach and emergency shelters activity components were funded $227,247 for program year 2021. Homeless prevention serves persons who are homeless or at risk of becoming homeless below 30% of the area median income. Homeless prevention funds can be used to prevent an individual or family from becoming homeless, to help an individual or family regain stability in a current housing or other permanent housing. Eligible and homeless prevention was funded $33,918. Rapid rehousing serves those who are literally homeless, can be used to help homeless individuals or families move into permanent housing and achieve housing stability. Eligible activities include housing relation and stabilization services, short-term and medium-term rental assistance. Allowable HOPWA activities and costs. HOPWA will fund the costs associated with the activity components of the program: tenant-based rental assistance, TBRA, short-term rental mortgage and utility assistance, STRMU, supportive services, housing information services, and emergency shelter housing operations. TBRA eligible households may receive financial assistance in the form of rental assistance and utility assistance. STRMU eligible households may receive financial assistance in the form of rental assistance, mortgage assistance, and utility assistance. Supportive services includes, but is not limited to, mental and health assessment, permanent housing placement, drug and alcohol abuse treatment and counseling, daycare, personal assistance, nutritional services, intensive care when required, assisting in gaining access to local, state, and federal government benefits and services, and health services for individuals with AIDS/HIV. Housing information services. Housing information services include, but are not limited to, housing counseling, information and referral services to help an eligible person locate, acquire, finance, and maintain housing. Emergency shelter operations. HOPWA funds may be used to assist all forms of housing designed to prevent homelessness, including emergency housing, shared housing arrangements, apartments, single-room occupancy dwellings, and community residents. Operating costs for housing includes maintenance, security, operation, insurance, utility, furnishing, equipment, supplies, and other incidental costs. Home TBRA can provide security deposit assistance, monthly rental assistance payments for up to 24 months, and utility deposit assistance. Documentation requirements and monitoring. ESG documentation requirements and monitoring. A quarterly report will be required to be submitted to the city 30 days after the close of each fiscal year for the duration of the agreement. Also, an annual report will be submitted in HMIS to report the number of individuals served with ESG funds. HOPWA documentation requirements and monitoring. A quarterly report will also be required to be submitted for HOPWA 30 days after the close of each quarter of the fiscal year for the duration of the agreement. Also, assistance is required in providing the data necessary for the city to complete and submit the consolidated annual performance and evaluation report. Home TBRA documentation and requirements and monitoring. A quarterly report will be required to be submitted to the city for home TBRA during the duration of the agreement. Also, project sponsors must monitor all subcontracted services on a regular basis to assure contract compliance and provide a written report supported with documentation of any necessary follow-up action as a result of non-compliance.
All right, thank you so much, Erica. With that, we'll go over very quickly the application process, as I believe the folks on this call did see most of this in the meeting yesterday. So by way of refresher, we're just gonna run through it again. The Housing and Community Development Division website contains all of the application materials, including the NOFA handbook, which goes into more detail about the programs, requirements, and the application process. So we highly recommend that you bookmark the www.fresno.gov/housing, and specifically that notice of funding available page where you'll find the consolidated NOFA handbook and all of the required application materials. All applications should submit one NOFA application Part A. That application gives us information specific to your organization. Some of the items required are presented here, some of which may take your organization some time to prepare. So we wanted to make sure you have that information well in advance, in particular, a resolution of the Board of Directors authorizing the application and naming the person or persons authorized to sign the application. We know that one might take a little bit longer to obtain. So for that one, while the application itself will be due on June 22nd, we'll just need that resolution before we complete our scoring and make our recommendations around July 7th, 2020. All applicants may submit one or more application Part B, and that application includes all of the details that are specific to the program for which you are requesting funding. Applicants are encouraged to attach up to 2 letters of support. And again, you may submit one or more Part B applications. For example, if you would like to submit both a program that meets one of the requirements that we discussed today for homeless and homelessness prevention, and maybe another public services program, you may submit one of each, a homeless and homelessness prevention application Part B, and a public services Part B application. And again, if you're not sure whether or not you ought to be submitting 1 or 2 applications based on the types of programs that you're operating. Feel free to give us a call and we'll help you through making that decision. The full tentative timeline for the application process is presented on this slide. Applications are due on June 22nd, 2020, after which city staff will score the applications based on the criteria presented therein and make recommendations. And the target date for city council consideration of the subrecipient agreements is August 20th, 2020. Following that, we'll issue notices of grant awards, and there will be a short process there as well where we'll ask for additional information and signatures. As in years past, applications are due by 4 p.m. on the submission deadline and postmarks are not accepted. Organizations are asked to submit 1 signed application and 1 digital copy of their application. Organizations are encouraged to mail their applications in advance of the deadline and call or email us to let us know that they're on the way. If you are planning to deliver your application in person, please contact us 24 hours in advance to arrange receipt. On account of the COVID-19 pandemic, things may change, so we want to make sure that we coordinate with you to ensure the success of that delivery. Organizations will also be required to submit a digital copy of their application, and you do have 3 options. The easiest one, of course, would be by email. You can email hcdd@fresno.gov. However, there is a limit on that. We can only accept attachments of up to 40 megabytes. So if your application exceeds that size, you'll need to pick one of these other options, which include a flash drive. You could include a flash drive with your physical submission, or you can use the city's FTP upload tool. And there are detailed instructions on how to use that in the appendix of the Consolidated NOFA handbook. But essentially, there's a link in there. You'll just go there, upload your documentation, and it'll provide you with a link that you'll then put in an email to us. And that link will allow us to download the application from that website. Again, we strongly recommend that you contact the program manager for your application upon submission. If you don't receive confirmation from us of your application submission within about 1 business day of receipt, please make sure to contact us at hcdd@fresno.gov or at 559-621-8300. And we'd also recommend that you reach out to your program manager, which in this case would be Erica Lopez. And speaking of Erica, we do have additional support available. So as applicants, you may schedule one-on-one consultations with Erica for the period from June 8th through June 12th. Please contact her in advance to schedule a consultation at erica.lopez@fresno.gov. And if you have general inquiries, feel free to email us at hcdd@fresno.gov. And with that, we will open it up for questions. Looks like we finished a little early, so we have lots of time for questions if you have any. If you would like to ask a question and are signed into the Zoom application, you can add yourself to the queue by selecting the icon labeled participants at the bottom center of your screen. That'll open up another window, and in that window, you'll see the label raise hand. So you'll click that to raise your digital hand. If you're joined by phone, select *9, and that will add you to the queue, and we will unmute you in turn so that you can ask your question of us. So with that, I will pause for a few moments. See if we have any questions. And again, at the moment, we have here with us Thomas Morgan, the manager for the Housing and Community Development Division, and the administrative manager, Karen Jenks, are also available to answer questions, as well as myself and Erica Lopez. So it's a great opportunity. If you have any questions, we'll just hold for 1 more minute, make sure that no one's trying to sort out the Zoom application. All right, so I don't see any questions. So with that, I'll thank you. And if you do have any questions that come up between now and application submission deadline, feel free to reach out to us. at hcdd@fresno.gov, or you may also email Erica Lopez your question directly as well. So with that, we will thank you and hope you have a great afternoon.